can sing. Well, welcome, Mercy Doctors. We have Dr. John Epperly. Raise your hand. Dr. Paul McQuillan. Dr. Shay McQuillan. Dr. Shay Epperly. It's confusing. Yeah. Shay, yeah, see, I forget too. Shay Epperly. April McQuillan. Well, we'll start with Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul, why are you personally passionate about this issue?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say hi to everybody. It's actually, there's a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, so it's really comfortable just to talk to everybody. It's great to see everybody here. I'm really passionate about this issue because I'm a doctor and I'm supposed to be, I guess. No, first of all, I'm a dad. First of all, I'm a dad. I've got kids. I care about them. And I care about you guys. I care about your kids. You know, I want to first say that, you know, we're not the beer Nazis. We're not against alcohol, period. We're here because we want to make a difference as it pertains to underage drinking. We're against underage drinking, and we're going to show you why. I personally am passionate about this because I've seen the effects of alcohol on kids, both personally and in the community here. In the community, I wear a lot of hats, right? I'm an emergency room doctor, I'm a family doctor, I do a host of activities, I'm a medical examiner. Some of those things are fun and some of them aren't. You know, in the emergency room, I see people that drink way too much. I've seen kids in this community that have drank way too much and have gotten raped at parties. Okay, I've seen people who drink way too much, who get in the car and drive and run people over. I've seen the people who get run over. Okay, so I've seen the effects in this community, not on people that are out there someplace, but on probably on people here, on people in your family. This is about my kids and about your kids. It's about us. Okay, this is not an issue that's out there someplace. You know, in my own family, in my extended family, I have 4 people who are alcoholics, okay? I'll just tell you flat out, these people didn't wake up one day and just decide to start drinking a fifth of whiskey. They started drinking and partying early in high school, maybe junior high. It was a good time for a while, but pretty soon they couldn't get away from the bottle. They were addicted and they were enslaved by this thing, and there's some really serious consequences, especially for people who start drinking at a young age. So that's why I care. This is a great community. We've got some room for improvement. You know, I did want to tell you a story about that. You know, there's some resistance to this. There's some people that really don't like that we're talking about this. But you know, I want to tell you a story about a patient of mine to kind of illustrate why I'm talking about it. I had this guy. He's a really nice guy. He came to me with headaches. He had headaches for a while. They were getting worse. He'd actually had a seizure. He couldn't move his arm. I mean, he was sick. You know, but I like this guy and I like his family. And, you know, I didn't really want to worry him too much. So I did a special X-ray of his head. I did an MRI, and he had a big brain tumor. And I just, you know, I couldn't bear to tell this guy that he had a brain tumor. He was going to die of it. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, and you know, he had his family I liked, and so I just kind of played it off. And
I don't believe this story, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, you know, it's true. This never really happened. I'd be a terrible doctor if I did that. Okay, so I'm not going to him. You know, that would be terrible if I actually did that. I'd be a terrible doctor. But you know, we've got something that's kind of like a cancer, and it's eating at our community right now. It's eating at our kids, and it sounds dramatic, but it's not. I told you the stories. These things have really happened. You know, which one of you out here would you like to know if you had cancer? Would you want your doctor to tell you about that? I would. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we're here to tell you we've got a problem. We need to deal with it. All right. That's why I'm passionate about this.
All right. I'm Dr. April, and I just, I want you guys to just look around the room and look at the faces of people here. These are your friends, your family, your students, your teachers, and this cancer in this community that Paul's talking about, this affects all of us in one way or another. And if it hasn't yet, it will someday. Take a look at the faces up here. These are your kids, these are our kids, and this is why we care. This is why we're here, why we're talking to you about this tonight, because we care about these kids, and we know that you do too, and that you want the best for them. Since we've come here, we've seen a lot of different situations in our practice in Chickasaw County that have been related to underage alcohol use. we could go on and on with lots of stories telling you about them, but we've chosen a few tonight just to illustrate some of the problems that we're seeing. And as you listen to these stories, I want you to know that these are true stories that are based on things that are happening here in this community. These aren't kids that are in a magazine or a story that you're reading. These are our kids here in this community. And so instead of having me tell you these stories, I've asked a few of our students to help us with this. So first of all, I want to start off just by thanking Penny Perkins for working with our students on this. And I want to thank our very brave students tonight, Mitch Gage, Brooke Loftus, and Emily Marvin. Now, the first story that you're going to hear has to do with what we call alcohol poisoning, which can happen just after one time of binge drinking. Please, as you listen to this, keep in mind that this could be your child, this could be your brother. And the ending may have been a different result. Just recently, we've had very local situations that didn't have quite as good of ending as this story that you're going to hear right now. So just keep that in mind as you listen to these words.
Hi, my name is Joe, and this is my story. It all started yesterday when I woke up. My life was different. It all happened Friday after school. My girlfriend, Jenny, and I had been going out for almost a whole year. And then out of the blue, she ended it. I was devastated, but girls, whatever. So that night was the big party, and boy was I ready. I had a few beers, and one thing led to another, and the next thing I know, I'm in a room, strapped to a bed, tubes hooked up to me, machines beeping. Around me, there were plenty of people running and shouting about. I didn't know what was going on. There was all this black stuff covering my mouth, and I wanted to vomit, but I couldn't. There was also a tube shoved down my throat. I wanted to talk, but I couldn't with that tube shoved down my throat. They must have given me medicine, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. I woke up in a hospital bed, and my mom was sitting right next to me. She told me what had happened, and I saw tears rolling down her face. I had drank too much, and I stopped breathing. I stopped breathing, and then my heart stopped beating. I died. But by a miracle of God, I started breathing again. The next thing I knew, the doctor came in and started asking me all sorts of questions, like if I had tried to kill myself, or if I had taken any other drugs. I'm not that kind of person, though, or at least I don't think I am. Drinking and occasionally weed, and I guess I was a little bit more upset than usual. But nobody told me I could die from drinking too much. I didn't even think I had that much to drink. I mean, we do this every weekend. I mean, why was this weekend any different? Well, it's going to be different. Seeing my mom cry like that, my future, my life. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mitch. Wow, that would really crush me if that was my kid or my story. This is just one of the physical effects of alcohol that we see in the clinic. Keep in mind that tonight you're just hearing two stories. There are many, many more that we could be sharing. These physical effects that we see involve liver disease, severe alcohol poisoning, depression, the list goes on and on. However, the main physical effect we're going to focus on tonight is brain development, and you'll hear a lot about that a little bit later.
Now, Dr. April, we've known about these negative effects for some time. I mean, beyond the negative effects, what's really worse than that?
Well, I'm going to share with you a second story that involves something that we see consequences of in our clinic almost every day. This isn't just one girl's story. There are hundreds of stories just like this that we could share with you. This has to do more with the social effects and decision-making that's going on when alcohol is involved. This has to do with the sexual promiscuity and the effects of that behavior on one's emotional health. This is what is going on often in our community with our children when alcohol is involved. Again, these are actresses. The stories have been changed to protect identities.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is my story. I'm a normal 15-year-old girl. I make decent grades and come from a good family. I play sports. I like chocolate and watching movies, and I love hanging out with my friends.
Hi, my name is Annie, and this is my story. I'm a normal 15-year-old girl. I come from a good home and make decent grades. I am involved in sports, and I like movies and chocolates. I love hanging out with my friends. My best friend's name is Sarah. She's great, and we have a lot in common. Well, all but one thing.
My best friend's name is Annie. She's great. We have a lot in common. Well, all but one thing. When I was 13, my parents started letting me drink alcohol, but only in the basement of our home, and only when they were home. It started as just one drink even. Annie just wasn't okay with that, and she said it's something her parents felt strongly about too. I really missed hanging out with Annie, and I was so excited when she decided to come check out the party with me last weekend.
I mean, Sarah's such a fun girl, and she's not a bad person. And I wanted to know what I was missing. I felt like I was the only person at school who wasn't going to parties, so why not? At the beginning, it all seemed fine. We were just hanging out, laughing, and having a good time. It was great. Sure, other people were drinking, but I still didn't. It's just something I feel strongly about and knew I wasn't going to do. I guess the next few hours is when it started getting strange. Sarah was so drunk. I just never seen her that way before. I started to get embarrassed and wanted to go home, but she's still my friend. I felt like I needed to stay and take care of her. I guess this is the kind of stuff people talked about at school, but I never thought about it actually being true. I guess this is the reason my doctor talks so much about STDs and the importance of not having sex. I don't know if Sarah even knows or maybe cares what happened.
Annie's such a great friend. I hope she had a good time. I know I did. Well, I think I did. I don't remember much of what happened, but I woke up in the basement and walked home the next morning. So I'll have to call Annie later and make sure she had a good time. I think I need to go to the doctor, though. I mean, I'm not sure what happened or who with, but the last time I had a checkup, my doctor said I should probably have some STD testing and a pregnancy test done. I mean, really? Isn't that what they have the morning after pill for anyways? He even started asking me questions about rape. That's just crazy. Just because I don't know what went on or who with, my mom even says as long as I'm on birth control, I should be okay. I'm just a normal teenager, right? I mean, whatever's going on now won't actually affect me later. Those pictures on Facebook, well, yeah, they're embarrassing, but that's just life, right? I'm just trying to fit in anyways.
Wow, those were some scary stories, scary but true stories that are happening. And that's why we're here. Things need to change. This isn't okay anymore. Even if this just happens to one more person, this isn't okay. We need to change things. Look at this picture. This is a picture of an iceberg. And what you see of an iceberg is usually just the tip of it. That's what's above the water. And this iceberg, I want you to imagine this being our teenage drinking problem. The surface problems that we see, just maybe 10% of the problem, are the physical problems, the drinking, the partying, the driving. 90% of the problem lies beneath this, beneath the surface. That's where our biggest problem is, with the emotional and behavioral problems, the long-term, irreversible problems. These can include depression, suicide, anxiety, difficulty focusing or paying attention, rape, emotional instability, violence, anger, STDs, abuse, cervical cancer. The list could go on and on. These are usually related to underage alcohol use. We've seen all too often with peer pressure and the culture that drinking starts as just fitting in and just having fun. And it starts as innocent. But then one night can change the rest of your life. The reality is that this problem has long-term effects on our kids, and we need to do something about this. We could easily make this a 3 to 8 hour meeting. Don't worry, we won't. Our focus for tonight is mainly...
I don't know if I can stay awake that long.
Our focus for tonight is mainly going to be on the effects of the teenage brain and the medical, physical consequences. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But we just wanted to make sure that you were aware that there are all these other problems going on too.
Well, that was a cool photo, Dr. April. Dr. Shea, what's the deal with all this new attention on teens drinking? I mean, has there anything changed from what it used to be, or what's the deal?
Well, first let's go ahead and I'll get to that answer, but let's talk about some of the history that we've had just as a country. If you look at this slide, it talks about right here, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. If you guys went back 50 years and can remember to the point where doctors used to walk into the exam rooms with a cigarette in their mouth, probably many of you can never even remember that day, but that's because between the time that was occurring and now, we were able to get more scientific evidence that shows that smoking causes cancer, causes lung disease, and so we went ahead and changed things, and now we definitely don't walk in with a cigarette in our mouth. We encourage our patients not to smoke, and now we're even seeing effects of secondhand smoke, and that we want that changed as well. Another example of that would be seat belts. I remember hopping around the car from front seat to back seat when I was a kid, and probably most kids in this room, though, don't remember those days. And why? Because we were, again, educated, found through research that children are much more likely to survive a car accident if they're in a restrained seat or a car seat. And so, again, that's been a time that we've made a change in our behavior because of scientific evidence that persuaded us to make those changes. I'm just going to go through some of the old news. Probably a lot of this you guys already know, a lot of it that you've already heard about alcohol, but that it does affect every cell in the body. There's both immediate consequences of alcohol, those that you see when that affects how people think, and they make decisions that you wouldn't normally make if you weren't under the influence of alcohol. Increased sexuality, you're much likely to be murdered when you're drinking, increase in your memory, or decrease in your memory capacity, increase in the amount of crime that's committed, and those are all because of altered ways of thinking. Then there's also the chronic or long-term effects that when people have been drinking for a long-term time they have. Let me give you a quick example of that. I had a 45-year-old man who came in liver failure into the hospital. I don't know if any of you have seen end-stage liver disease, but it's really, really sad. It's probably one of the hardest things that I've dealt with as a physician because there's nothing that we can do about it, and there's nothing that the family can do about it. And the liver shuts down, and the circulation changes, and people vomit up blood, and then they start getting confused, and it's a very slow, agonizing death. And I know, if you guys, you wouldn't want that for your children, you wouldn't want that from your family members or your classmates, and so that's why I think this new information is going to be so powerful for you. based on the information that we had before, what we would do is we would take away keys from our children or from, you know, those we love that had been drinking too much. How many of you think that's a great idea? Just raise your hand. Okay, good. We're off to a good start today. The problem is that now we're going to present some new information that's also going to cause a reason for us to change even more. Some of the new news is that the teenage brain has not developed by the age that we thought it once had. Before we thought kids were developed, brains were developed by 7 years of age, do what you want after that, they're developed. But now, through research, which John's actually going to go through with you, there's a lot of stuff that shows that's not true. But we're going to go, one of the other news things that we're going to go through is just some of the statistics in our community. If you look up here, 43% of 11th graders here in our county say that they started drinking by 14 years of age. If you want to compare us in the state group, is 29%.
Now, is this just more than a few? This is just a sip of alcohol, or
no? This is more than a few sips. This isn't their first taste. This is more than a few sips. Was what the question asked.
Okay.
If you want to look at the 8th graders, they said 22% of them had been drinking more than a few sips by the age of 12. Again, comparing that to the state group of 16%. So what's the new info? Why is this so big? The new information is that the earlier a person drinks, the more likely they are to become an alcoholic, the more likely they are that their brain's not going to develop fully. And I mean, this is a huge problem of underage drinking in our community. If we can just get kids, and if kids, you can make the decision to wait longer, you're much less likely to be that man in the hospital room dying of liver failure with your kids around you. I mean, it's a very sobering thought, but John, I think, and Paul are going to go through a little bit more of the statistics or the research with you guys. So.
Okay. Slide up there. Okay, what you see here is a chart. We all love charts. So that this basically was a study that was done of alcoholics, and they said, hey, how old were you when you took your first drink? You know, as these guys pointed out, this is more than a few sips, we'll say. This isn't like communion wine or just a sip. This is your first drink, okay? And this isn't like somebody went to the mall and had a rinky-dink study of 50 people. This is 43,000 alcoholics, all right? This is a lot of people. This is a good study. What this shows you is that 16% of those surveyed had their first drink before 12. 15% had it before 14, and if you go to the other end of the spectrum there, only 2.6% of those who had an alcohol problem and addiction had their first drink by after age 21 there. So you can see that, these are huge numbers. You can see that a person basically increases their risk of being an alcoholic in the future by 8 times by drinking before the age of 14. That's scary. Those are big numbers. And then, you know, you can see a full 95% of those surveyed started drinking before age 21. So this is very sobering. So another study basically said that after age 12, for every year you delay alcohol use after age 12, you decrease the lifetime risk of becoming an alcoholic by, I believe it was 14%. And that's huge. So if you could just wait from getting a kid to drink at age 12 to past age 18, that's a full risk reduction of 84%. So if I could improve your odds of winning the lottery by 84%, I think you'd probably do it. These are huge things. So who here thinks that some kids, of course not you, but maybe somebody else, some kids here in Chickasaw County might be having their first drink before age 14? Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that's what I hear. So who here is okay if those kids become alcoholics? Like, who here thinks that's all right? Yeah. So me too. So one public health goal of the coalition and of our teaming up with the coalition is to just delay that first drink, to push back that first drink to decrease the risk of becoming an alcoholic. We know that the age of the first drink is the single best predictor as to who's going to become an alcoholic, who's going to have addiction problems. You know, I used to think that in Europe, that in England and Europe and Germany, that people just knew how to handle their alcohol. I thought that maybe, kids grew up having a glass of wine with supper, everything was good, they knew how to handle themselves, and why couldn't we just be a little bit more sensible like them? We're finding out this is not true. We're finding out that Europe's been in denial for a long time about their alcohol problems. I was working overseas. I was working at a hospital in Africa. I had the pleasure to work with 2 med students. One was a white African. Yes, there are white people in Africa. He was a white African, and one guy was a British guy. And I was saying, gee, if we could only be a little bit more like you, if we could only know how to handle ourselves and how to not abuse the alcohol, and if we could just have a beer and have that be okay. They said, Paul, you're wrong about that. We have a huge alcohol problem, and it's contributing to a huge crime rate, a huge rate of psychiatric illness, and the list goes on. Like we've kind of gone down that road. So, it's important that we keep our kids from drinking, especially at a young age.
All right, I'm going to stand up. I don't sit still very well. So, next portion of the slide, we're going to go into painstaking detail about neuroanatomy. I'm going to talk to you about something called the amygdala, the hippocampus, the gyrus, the sulci.
Dr. John, can you stick to English, please?
What's wrong with that?
That was Latin or something.
Okay. All right, now we'll dumb it down. We'll make sure it comes across nice and clear. All right, so you guys get purple, green, and red, right? We can stick with that. So how about everybody stand up? This is going to be our 7th inning stretch. I know you're getting tired. It's getting warm. Stand up for a second.
You people in the gym, too. We can see you.
That's right. Okay, so we're going to review really quickly the 3 basic parts of the brain. You can see in the purple, it's called the reptilian part of the brain. So everybody put your hands on the very back lower part of your head. That's approximately where the reptilian part of the brain hangs out. Okay, that's the first part. Now that's the part of the brain that's the first to develop. That's where we learn our major instincts of survival. So babies have a well-developed reptilian sense. It's how we know how to breathe. Even if we don't think about it, we breathe automatically, and things like that. Now put your hands on the side of the head a little farther up. That's called, in the fancy word, the limbic. We'll just call it the green portion of the brain for you guys here today. Now that's pretty well developed when you're 8, 9, and 10. That's really the emotional part of the brain. It kind of makes you want to do things. It's why candy tastes good. Why toys are fun to play with. Things like that. So we get that. Even us big kids, we like to play with toys. Let's put our hands on the top of our head now. And that's called the neocortex. And once again, we'll call it the red portion of the brain. Now, pat your head and rub your tummy. No, that's okay. You guys can sit down. Thank you very much. Well, they're doing it pretty good up there, actually. So.
Hey, Dr. John.
Good coordination.
What is the red portion or that top for? I mean, what do we need that part for?
So yeah, let's back up a second. So we had our hands on the top part of our brain. That's called the neocortex. Now that's very important because that's really where we develop higher thinking, critical thinking, and really, I'll just make it simple again. That's kind of the stop sign. So that's what keeps us from doing dangerous behaviors, from jumping out of a moving car, from doing drugs that could be dangerous to us. Now what we've learned over the last really 10 years is this doesn't really finish developing until the age of 25. Now, who in here is any insurance adjusters in here? No. Well, what age, parents know this, what age does an insurance policy on a vehicle finally drop? 25, you know it, yeah. What age do a rental car company want you to start will they let you start renting cars? 25. So these people, maybe they've known something that scientists just took a little longer to figure out and to prove. So it's very true that 25 is really the age where the brain is finally fully developed. Now look with me at this little picture, and again, we'll stick with colors, we keep things simple here. So you can see at age 5, there's not very much blue, right? Nice and simple. By age 20 and beyond, a lot of blue. Now this is really the color change as the brain continues to develop. But if you look with me here in this outlined area of red, this is really the ages between 10 and 20 where there's rapid change and increase in the speed of development of the brain. Now, I don't want to go into a lot of detail about the study, but they're really the take-home points from this is three things. First thing, when you drink alcohol at a young age, and that's what we're hitting right here, the young teens drinking alcohol, your stop sign is not developed. You see, you don't have enough blue in the front part of your brain that helps you have the ability to stop. So you do too much risky behavior in the midst of drinking. Now that happens instantly. That's kind of old news for us. The new news is that stop sign never develops. So those kids that drink at a young age, they never see that blue in that part of their brain because they get stuck in the early portions. The third thing is your brain never fully develops, so you never reach your full academic and intellectual potential. So you get stuck really as a high school kid. And no offense to you high school kids, but you guys still have a lot of potential. And you don't want to get stuck where you are. And by drinking alcohol at an early age, you get stuck in those years where you just have the green and not enough blue. And that's kind of the critical piece of this whole thing. April's going to share with you a little bit more, I think, about kind of another similar study.
No, this information is pretty concerning, especially for teenagers, but how much is really too much for teenagers? I mean, what's the acceptable amount?
Well, to talk about that, we're going to look at another study that was done. And instead of blue, we're going to use pink. This is a picture of two brains. Now, this study was done on two 15-year-old males. And the two different categories they put them in was non-drinker, someone who didn't drink at all, and a 15-year-old male heavy drinker. Now, shout out some answers as to what do you think were the qualifications. How many drinks puts a person qualified as a heavy drinker? How many drinks at one time? 15. How many? 10. Okay. I feel like I'm on the Price is Right. Actually, it was 5. 5 drinks in one time put someone into that category of a heavy drinker. Now, how many nights a week do you think? Let's show hands. How many nights a week do you think this person had to drink? 5 drinks to be considered a heavy drinker. I see some 5s, 4s, 2, 3, 10. I think there's only
7 days a week.
7 days a week. Actually, the number of days that they had to drink was 2. 2 days, more than 5 drinks at a time, and you were considered a heavy drinker. Now, think about that. How many kids do we know who are drinking maybe more than 5 drinks on a Friday, Saturday night? I'm not going to tell you what category you fall into, but if you look up here, this is the brain activity going on. 15-year-old non-drinker, 15-year-old heavy drinker. Not drunk. These were done when they were sober. This was not at a time when they were using alcohol. And what they did was they asked both of the people in these categories it's called a memory task recall. So they gave them a picture to look at and said, we're going to ask you in a few minutes what that picture was. They did some verbal testing. We're going to tell you something. We want you to remember that in a few minutes. And if you look at the brain activity that was going on, they found a significant deficit in this group of 15-year-olds that were in that category of high drinking, or heavy drinking, which is only 2 days a week. This is very important new news. We didn't used to know this, and this is why we're here telling you this now, because this is this important. They have found a 10% deficit in the group that was drinking in the amount of things that they could remember. I know high school is an important, fun time. It's a time when there's lots of partying going on. It's only 4 years of your life. After that, you've got the rest of your life, and you're going to be having a job that's going to require you to remember things. It's going to affect you in college. These are important things that we're finding. Another study, I don't have a picture of it, showed that they measured the volume of, as John referred to earlier, the hippocampus, which is the area of your brain responsible for memory. And they measured the volume of that brain in the 2 different groups, heavy drinker and non-drinker. they found a 10 to 35% decrease in the volume of that part of these kids' brains. Their brains were actually shrinking, is what they found. So these effects are real, and they're happening now to our kids that are drinking in our community. And, you know, as we're here telling you this, we want you as parents, teachers, students, friends, we want you guys to share this information and be part of this. Our kids are young. You know, we're doing our best to influence them. This is your time now to influence your kids and your peers. This is the information that we're sharing you so that you can have this and go out and try to make a difference. We know the long-term effects and the old news, but this new news is here, and it's calling us to act now.
Dr. Paul, is alcohol really that addicting? I mean, when people drink alcohol, how do they become addicted to substances and things like alcohol in the first place?
Yeah, I think that drinking is huge at the teenage stage of development, even the preteen stage of development. Partially because that red part of the brain is just not quite developed enough to put the brakes on, to make those critical decisions, to refrain from dangerous behaviors. Partially. So the teenage brain just isn't equipped to deal with the short-term and the long-term effects of alcohol use. Yeah, alcohol is a drug just like any other drug of potential abuse, in that if somebody gets really drunk a lot, it takes them more and more alcohol to get more and more drunk. In fact, they may not get more and more drunk. They may just have to drink more booze to get the same level of drunkenness. Okay, so that's called tolerance. You know, a second thing which leads to addiction and the use of more alcohol is a person who drinks a lot of alcohol gets really good at drinking a lot of alcohol. Their body gets good at breaking that alcohol down, usually through the liver. But whether tolerance or increased metabolism, those two words are involved, a person has to drink more and more to get the same level of kind of drunkenness or high, if you will. And so that brain, that teenage brain, just sort of sits in this alcohol at higher and higher levels, and we have a higher and higher risk for the things we talked about. So, you know, as John said, the teen brain is wired for risky behavior, and that's why it's particularly dangerous at this point in time. Now, here you see a picture of my daughter standing on a crocodile.
Why is your daughter on a crocodile?
That's not Abby. That's not my daughter.
That's crazy.
I don't know whose daughter that is, but I'd like to know. That's obviously dumb for a lot of reasons. She could be eaten. So that's ridiculous. But you know, I just throw that picture as kind of a starting point for a story. You know, I was kicking a ball around in the front yard with my daughter. Love my kids. Love to spend time with my kids. Kicking around a ball with my daughter the other day out in front of my house. Abby kicked the ball. It's my girl. Kicked the ball. Ball rolls to the street. Big trucks coming down the street, right? So what do? I go out. I pick up the ball. I pick up Abby. You know, there's construction going on down the block. No more ball. Sorry, Abby. Got to put the ball away. Got to stop doing what we're doing right now. You know, just like the old news said, take the keys away. I mean, you know, sometimes just saying don't play ball is not enough. I take the ball away. We need to take the alcohol away in order to provide boundaries for our kids. This may not make you popular, but that's the safest thing for your kids. I mean, whether you're 4 and a half, 14 and a half, or 40, you need boundaries to keep you safe. And as parents, we've got to provide those.
Well, I think we definitely have learned lots of things about the brain and about why underage drinking can be dangerous. But what should parents do? I mean, how do they approach this? This is a difficult issue.
Yeah, it is, Rick. I think one of the bottom line things that we want you guys to take home is that the brain is still very active in developing between that 12, 13, 14 age group. And as I talked about before, you know, it was a great idea to just take the keys away when they were drinking too much. But now that you know this information and now that I've learned this information, it now needs to change to take the alcohol away completely. And so next we're just going to talk a little bit about, okay, well, so now we know the information. What are we going to do as parents? What are we going to do as community? What are some good strategies that we can use in order to change behavior in our community?
So we just want you to think about what do we currently have going on here in our community, in New Hampton, in Nashua, in Ionia, in Alta Vista, Lawler. What are we currently doing in terms of prevention at school, in the community? How can we make alcohol less accessible to our kids? How are we doing as a community? Are we doing that? Are we not? Is it enough what we're doing?
Yeah, let's talk about 5 quick kind of practical strategies that we can kind of put into place after leaving here tonight. First of all, really this is directed towards the parents and community leaders and young adults, is relationships. Relationships matter. Finding people that you can develop a positive relationship with and continue to encourage these kids as they're growing up. I think a big thing is we often tend to focus on the negative. When a kid screws up, that's when the parent has the biggest relationship with his child. It's not when they're doing the good things or doing the things right that the parent's often the most prevalent, around the most, I should say. So we as young adults and parents need to take initiative to really know our kids, to get involved with our kids, and really accentuate or make praise of the positive things and the positive behaviors they're doing.
And these strategies that we're sharing with you have actually been proven through studies. So it's not just our opinions. These are things that have been proven in other communities that they've done these studies with. The second one is creating alternative activities for our kids so that they have something else to do besides going to these parties and drinking and whatever else is going on there. What do we have going on right now for our kids? What other alternatives are we offering them? It doesn't have to cost money, but it's going to cost time. We have to come up with things that they can do. We're in competition with our kids and with their time. One of the things that I thought was interesting in this study that they found, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but this was a study of kids that didn't drink at all, and another study of kids that were heavy drinkers. And one big difference that they found with these kids that abstained and didn't drink at all was that they had family dinners at their house 5 nights a week. That's a simple thing, and I don't know how many of us do that. Do we have time for that? That's a simple thing that doesn't cost any extra money. It costs time, and it's sitting down with your kids, knowing them, creating something else for them to do. And that really stood out to me in the study, that was one of the big differences. Something as simple as family dinner that we all could do in our homes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And knowing your kids, I think, is huge. Having a relationship with your kids and being involved in times of non-conflict, and that's huge. The next one is monitoring. I mean, this is sort of common sense stuff for the parents and for the school. I mean, being involved in your kid's life. Do you know where your kids are? Do you know your kids' friends? Do you know your kids' friends' parents? Do you know those parents' stance on alcohol? Did their kids drink in the basement? It's a small community. We know each other. So you need to know those things about your friends and where your kids are. If you think your kid's been drinking, be nosy. If they smell funny, if they're acting funny, ask them.
You kind of smell funny sometimes, Paul.
I do smell funny sometimes. I smell funny right now, actually. But yeah, so an engaged, involved, and nosy parent. If you've got a kid who, if they know that it's not okay that you drink it in your home, and you're engaged and nosy, and you catch them, they're less likely to drink again statistically. So be nosy. Know your kids are.
All right, now we're going to break our cell phones. Everybody break your cell phones out. Hopefully they're still on. We've got a cool technology survey here to do. So what I want you to do is, in the line which you're going to text, you're going to text the code to 37607. So instead of the phone number, put that code in there. And then
Rick, it's only 6 digits.
Yeah, that's all right, John. It's technology, don't worry. And then text in the message body one of those 2 answers, either true or false. And the question is, kids are going to parties where the parents know the kids are drinking. And by kids, we mean less than 18. No offense, 17-year-olds. Let's see what we get. Getting a few answers. It's going to start rolling in fast here. All right, so that's the end of the study. So good job, everyone. We did the technology thing. So that's an interesting poll. Kind of what we see here is this is what everyone in this room is really thinking. So this shows that people know The kids are going to parties where the kids are drinking with the parents, and then the kids are going to parties where the kids are drinking. And that's about 70% of people think that's happening. So, I mean, what this really shows is it kind of confirms some of the things that were shown in the Iowa Youth Survey. And that's some of the charts that Dr. Paul showed earlier about the differential levels in terms of our county drinking compared to the rest of the state. What else can we do to have parents discourage kids from drinking, Dr. Shea?
Another thing that we can do is express a clear no-use policy. This is probably the number one protective factor that parents can do for their children. And I honestly see this day in and day out in the clinic. Whenever I do my social history with any junior high or high school student, I ask them, are you drinking? How much? And if the answer is yes, they are drinking, I typically follow it up with, and what do your parents think about that? And I would say 95% of them say they're okay with it as long as I keep it under control, don't drive, or perhaps do it in the basement. The children that are answering no, I don't drink, and I ask, what do your parents think about that? They say they would kill me if they ever knew I even tried it. And so obviously that's you guys, parents are such a big influence with their children as far as their stance that they are going to take on alcohol.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the sayer of unpopular things tonight. You know, that a huge way to cut down on teens drinking is just accountability and making underage drinkers in our community be accountable. Our kids have to be accountable. When there's a no-use policy, when kids know, hey, I'm going to get in trouble if I drink, and they get caught drinking, and there's fair, consistent, and immediate consequences for that, kids drink less. Okay, you know, kids need to feel this. When I was a senior in high school a while ago, the entire, at least half of the varsity football cheerleading team did not cheer for half a season, okay? Because they got caught at a drinking party. Some of them weren't even drinking. They were just at the party where they were drinking, okay? So that's the way things are done in a lot of school districts. And, you know, people want to play. People want their kids to play. You know, we want good athletes to play. But if there are known consequences, if people break the rules, get caught drinking, that's a powerful thing. The coalition's working with the community to build a zero-tolerance policy and bring that to the community. You know, working with stores or retailers that sell alcohol, working with people that put on community events and festivals, and also working with school officials just to make sure that we're protecting our kids. You know, we need to have clear rules and laws and enforce those things, and we need to support the people, the police, the school officials whose job it is to enforce those things, because they're unpopular things to enforce. We all know each other. It's difficult to do this. You know, this is a big deal. We as a society, as a country, and as a state, like in the last couple of years, right? We decided that concussions are a big deal. You know, so now you could be like the stud star quarterback of the football team and have a mild concussion. I have to pull you for 7 days. I've got to pull you out of play for 7 days with a return to play progression. Everybody hates it. The athletes hate it, the parents hate it, the coaches hate it, the fans hate it. Everybody hates it. But we have decided that protecting that kid's brain and making sure he grows up right and does well in adult years is more important than winning that game on Friday night. So this is not weird stuff. There's a precedent for this. We need to protect our kids.
You got any good news, April?
Actually, I do.
That's good.
The good news for tonight, which is what we're going to end with, is that kids really do pay attention to the words and actions of their parents. As Shay said, you know, the kids' responses that we're seeing in the surveys that were done show us that they really do listen to what you value, and that's what their actions are paralleling. So in the survey, while alcohol is seen by parents as okay, we have this huge percentage of kids that are drinking, and these kids also understand that their parents are not okay with other drugs, and so we have a much smaller percentage of kids that are doing other drugs. The other good news, you know, we've been focusing on drinking and the problems with drinking, especially locally, but there are kids that aren't drinking. We do have a substantial percentage of kids that are resisting that peer pressure and aren't drinking. So we want to say that we're very proud of those kids, and we want to support them as much as we can.
Good job, guys.
Oh.
I was talking to the kids who weren't drinking. No, I'm not sure.
Thank you. And just one last point. We're not alone in this. There have been other states and counties that have had similar statistics to ours, to what we're presenting to you. And they've gone through these strategies that we've discussed. They've seen changes. It has gotten better. It takes time. But they have seen changes when people have gotten involved, and when we show that we care and that this is important to us and it is important to our kids and their future and our future as a community. The biggest change that they've shown that makes a true difference over time is actually the community changes that Paul talked about. The schools, the stores that are selling the alcohol, the law enforcement, the parents being actively involved in this. And we're just starting this process, and it's a good start, but we need more. We need you guys to get on board with this. And I think that's all that we have to share with the medical side of what's going on.
Thanks, Dr. April. Now we get to get you guys involved. This is a portion where you guys get asked your questions. So when you came in tonight, you were handed some pads of paper. If you haven't already, you can scribble some questions on there. Hopefully you have better handwriting than me. And we'll try to read them, and the doctors up here will answer those questions. So write some of those down, and we'll be collecting those. In the meantime, the first one, so we'll just throw it out there, anybody can answer. This is the first question from the audience. What is the impact of alcohol on athletic performance?
Well, I can try to take that one. Not good. It's a simple response. The biggest reason is alcohol. It decreases your motivation. So the more you drink, the less motivated you are to train, to work out, and to excel at the sport of your choice. So it's not a good thing. And I've seen this commonly among friends just growing up. Guys that really started hitting the booze heavy quickly dropped. These guys full of athletic potential were off the team within a year after they started turning to the booze. So you guys have seen that too. It's a no-brainer, but it's again proven. It'll significantly diminish or increase your apathy. You won't have the motivation to compete.
I'm going to jump in there too. Alcohol is full of calories and it will make you fat. So there's that. Fat people are slow, right? So you will perform poorly. That's one. Also, it decreases your sugar stores in your body, and so you're going to be really sluggish, especially right after you drink in the next couple of days. But overall, it's going to impact you very badly.
Also, if you're in jail, you probably can't play very well.
All these are bad.
Okay, here's another one. I drank a lot in high school, and I'm fine. What is all the fuss about?
I think those slides that Dr. Paul and Dr. John had gone through as far as becoming an alcoholic. Yes, you're maybe one of the ones that was able to drink when you were young, and you did become alcoholic. What we're trying to protect is our children from becoming alcoholics and your children from becoming alcoholics. The best thing that we can do for that is to delay the onset. And if you drank a lot when you were young, I don't know, your hippocampus might be smaller. You might remember more. You might do better in your business if you wouldn't have drank so much. And so I definitely think that this research is worth trying to change our behaviors for our children.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I just think that a lot of these problems are kind of generational, and so if Grandpa drank a bunch and he was okay, to your knowledge, then the parents drink a bunch and the kids. I mean, every generation is more and more prone to overdrink and to drink at a young age. And that's it's just sort of a vicious cycle. We know that people that drink at a young age are more prone to alcoholism. We know people with alcoholism are more prone to depression, suicide, divorce, all these sort of things that you'd really like to avoid if you can. So you might be okay, but maybe your kids will really struggle. So it's important.
Is research showing leaning towards alcoholism being more hereditary or early age drinking? Which is more strong for prediction?
The study that Paul showed earlier actually found that the earlier age of drinking was the greatest predictive value of who was going to be an alcoholic. So you might be, family history is important as well. But in that study that was done with over 40,000 people, which, like he said, is a huge study, they found that the single greatest predictor was the age of first intake of alcohol. So, according to that study, that's your answer.
This will be a non-medical question, but what activities do you have in mind for high schoolers? What are some things that you guys like to see? They have examples. Junior high goes bowling, skating, etc.
Right, I think that's going to take a lot of putting our heads together as a community. And I mean, there are things that we can do that don't exist right now. I mean, some towns nearby have theaters. We can think about that. What about getting together for a flag football league? I mean, that sounds pretty fun to me. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of creativity in this audience, and so we can get our heads together and we can think about those things. Obviously, those answers aren't easier. They would have been done, but they're there.
Yeah, can I just add to that real quick?
Yeah.
I've just recently gotten involved with the SAD group at school, and one of the things...
What does SAD stand for everyone?
The Happy SAD group. Students Against Destructive Decisions. Used to be Students Against Drunk Driving, but now it's Students Against Destructive Decisions. And so we're working to put together activities, and these kids just, we sat down one evening. I think it was just 4 of us, the officers of SAD, that had sat down just to start brainstorming of activities. They've got ideas. I mean, if we just ask our kids, what do you guys want to do? What do you want to be doing on the weekends instead of shrinking your brain? There are all these activities that they're coming up with. We just need to get behind them and help them plan these activities. I won't go through our whole list, but there were, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 different things that they just came up with. So we're working on it, is the answer, I guess.
There's a bunch of questions, but I think this is going to be the last one, just so we can move things along. What happens in alcohol poisoning?
John, you want to take it, or I talk too much, generally? Okay, well, I mean, one of the big things is the biggest thing is respiratory depression. You quit breathing, so it's bad to quit breathing, in short. So people basically their blood pressure can drop, their breathing becomes shallow. The waste product called carbon dioxide builds within a person's bloodstream, and that further causes a person not to breathe. And eventually, if someone's not treated for being really, really, really drunk and passed out to the point where they're really sick with it, they'll die. And when you're not breathing, the heart rate slows to a dangerous level, the blood pressure drops, and that's kind of alcohol poisoning in short. Can you guys elaborate on that? Can you?
Alcohol is basically a depressant. So some drugs hype you up, things like cocaine. Alcohol brings to then bring you down, and that's everything. That's your decision-making capacity, your breathing, basically most of your functions. And if you consume too much alcohol, and that's different for every person. That's dependent on your tolerance, on your body weight, how much you had to eat that day, and if you're sick. So maybe today you could have drank 10 beers a bit fine. Maybe tomorrow having 8 could cause alcohol poisoning. There's lots of different factors that go into it. So that's kind of the scary thing, is that you don't know exactly how much is too much. But when you get to people who are really not even be able to stay awake and you can't wake them up, that's kind of a scary thing, and you should think about getting that person to the hospital.
I guess chiming into that, you say alcohol is a depressant, it brings people down. That's true in the short term, and it's true in the long term. We talked a couple months back, we talked about depression and suicide. I mean, we have a problem with depression here. Every time you drink, you're giving yourself a depressant, not an antidepressant. So it's kind of like taking your daily depressant if you drink a lot. Certainly not helping people out over the long term, even though alcohol poisoning is immediately scary, but depression is a real deal and a really dangerous thing in the long run as well.
I guess the only other thing I'm going to say is that, when you talk about withdrawal from substances, it's usually the opposite of what the substance does to you in the first place. So withdrawal from alcohol That means someone who's addicted to alcohol, they're a long-term alcohol user, and they stop drinking. What happens to those people? Well, they become very irritable. They become very angry. They sometimes have seizures, and they can actually die from that. Alcohol is one of the few substances that if you're really addicted to it and you stop suddenly, you can die from it. And that's how strong alcohol really affects your body.
Right, so if there are people in here that are hooked, that find themselves drinking and they know they've got a problem, come see one of us, please. Don't just try and quit on your own. I've gone to medical examiner cases for that as well. People have died trying to quit on their own cold turkey at home. So it's the kind of thing that needs treatment, it needs help. It's a dangerous thing, so please, if you need help, come and ask.
All right, well, that's going to be our last question. Let's give a round of applause to these guys up here. We've got a few things left here. This next part is going to be mainly for the parents, but the kids are definitely welcome to listen to this. So, Dr. John, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, parents, if you got these little cards, I guess everybody's got them, but I'm talking directly right now to the parents. So for a second, Paul and I kind of want to take off our physician hats and talk to you as dads. So real quick, we're almost done. Go ahead.
No, this is just sort of, us standing here as fathers and wanting the best for our kids and wanting the best for your kids. And, you got these cards, they're kind of commitment cards. And, John, you want to read through those?
Yeah, so real quick, in green print here on the bottom of this card, these are some things that we want you guys to commit to. We're willing to commit to tonight, and we're asking you guys to commit to that for not only the sake of your own kids, but for our kids as they grow up in New Hampton over the next several years. So this says, I pledge to not serve alcohol to underage youth in my home.
I pledge not to purchase alcohol for youth.
I pledge to help in any way I am able with local efforts to reduce underage drinking.
I pledge just to have a conversation with my friends and family about the harm of underage alcohol use. I mean, this is pretty simple. This is just me saying, I don't want my kids drinking at your house. Your kids aren't going to drink at my house. We want a safe community here.
So yeah, again, we just challenge you to think about this. Don't just sign it because everybody else is doing it, but really think about it. And if you're willing to commit to it, then please do. Sign these cards, drop them off at the desk as you leave. There's a magnet there that you can stick on your refrigerator to remind you. Teens here in the audience, there's one for you too. Again, read it, think about it, and if you agree with it, please sign it. Drop it off. We thank you for your time. Thank you.
Now we have one final speaker, and this will be the final speaker of the evening. This is Jay Jurings, and he's representing the coalition.
Also, real quick, we'll be around after this to answer any questions, so feel free to come up if you have anything you want to talk about.
Thank you, guys. Hey, let's give them another round of applause. As all of you know, I'm really fairly new to the community yet. I've really just been here about 4 months, and I just like to say the passion of these doctors really makes me glad to be a part of this community. They're here because they truly do care, and they truly do want to make a difference. And I just want to say thank you to each of you. On behalf of the coalition, I want to mention some people who have been instrumental in making this evening happen. All these people are mentioned in your program as well. It takes a lot to do this. This is not just something they threw together this afternoon. They've worked very hard and long to make this happen. First, thank you to our physicians, Dr. John Epperly, Dr. Paul McQuillan, Dr. Rick Moberly, Dr. Shay Epperly, and especially Dr. April McQuillan for script writing and for advising the SAD group. Jennifer Monteith, Mercy Medical Center, Alice Baruth from Pathways Behavioral Services, John Anderson for script writing, Bob Rigler for letter writing, Sue Soonen and Suzanne Lowers for hours of work, of legwork, Rod Ingram for his continued leadership, Shelley Smith from Families Making Connections for data collection and technical assistance, to our actors, Mitch Gage, Emily Marvin, and Brooke Loftus, Penny Perkins for coaching the actors, Karen and Tim Amundsen from Pocket Full of Posies for the decorations, Jeremiah Cantu for facility help, Jeff Monteith for the lighting, Tim Schuler for videotaping, Heather Glazier from Rapid Printers for printing, Sarah Updegraff and Steve Murray for the magnets, Nancy Kreiner for the publicity, Reed Palo for support, Sheila Kabliska for capacity building, Kathy Babcock from Chickasaw Public Health, Chickasaw County Board of Health, the SAD students, 95.1 The Bowl, the New Hampton Tribune, and finally the New Hampton Community School District for the use of this auditorium. I also want to let you know there is a future opportunity for you. The Coalition invites you to a holiday gathering on December 6th at 6:30 p.m. at the Mercy Family Clinic. This event will be offered as an opportunity for further conversations in a smaller setting. Hot apple cider and cookies will be served. I want to thank each of you for coming tonight, and please have a safe drive home. Thanks.